I'm going to talk about a linked paired course that I've been teaching there for about 7 years. It's called ESL OD4. It's Advanced Reading and Psychology for ESL. So I teach, it's a level 6 or our highest level reading course, and it's linked to a Psych 101 content course. I teach on Tuesday nights usually. The Psych 101 course is taught by a psychology professor on Thursday nights. And it's 3 credit hours, so it meets about 2.5 hours to 3 hours a week. I'm just going to talk about my lessons learned from a lot of years teaching this learning community. And I did not design the course. I was just kind of asked by my director at one point right before the semester to teach it. And over the years, I've kind of had to figure out why I'm doing it and what I'm doing. So I learned the hard way. It was kind of a learning curve. So I'm going to talk about different things I tried, and in the end, what I've learned about it, really just focusing on the pedagogy and what works and what's been a challenge and what I would do differently or what I'm doing differently now. The rationale behind this has been kind of covered today already, so quickly. The students form stronger relationships with each other. I think that's true. There's that cross connect going on where they see each other twice a week. That's a big deal. And they kind of bond pretty tightly. And with the instructors, I think so. They feel kind of comfortable. Engage more deeply with the integrated content of their courses. I think so. They get more support from me mostly. You were talking about your program that had a lot of support I wish we had, like the tutors. And you seem to just be more structured with the whole thing. You've gone about it more in the right way, maybe. And I'm going to try to get some of these things into our program the way we do it. And theoretically, it's more likely that they'll pass their courses, stay at the college, and graduate with a credential. Theoretically, your research seemed to show that in others, and I have a little bit of research that's pretty good, but not all the research confirms that yet, so it kind of remains to be seen. Again, I did not design it, and I didn't really know about it, so I'm just going to be kind of honest about what was good and what wasn't. I'm not trying to really sell it, although in the end I think it's a great thing. Just to explain how we work at Union County College, to simplify it, this is the way most students go about it. At this point we have a writing course that now has the grammar mixed in, and that's a recent change. And we have reading. It also has speaking and listening, but just to simplify it, there's two, and they're both 6 credit hours. We're starting at level 3 because we're losing our level 1 and 2. It's getting trimmed down like seems to be happening across the state.
Is that because of the financial aid issue?
Yeah, it's mostly about completion rates, financial aid, it was really more coming from the administration pushing us to do this. And it hasn't happened yet, so for me to explain all the moving parts is too much, but basically that's what's happening, yes?
That's what I was just going to ask. Your L1s and L2s, are they going to continuing ed?
Yes, they're going into our continuing ed program, and so people at our table today had a lot of questions about how that's going to work, and we're just not sure if that's going to be successful or not. We're a little bit nervous about it, but it is what it is. So anyway, hopefully they move up to level 4, this kind of intermediate, low intermediate, high intermediate, low advanced, high advanced. If you get through all these, then you can take your college credit courses. That's the way it usually is. This special section of reading that I'll be talking about called O84 is linked to the psychology course. So they're taking college credit before they're done with ESL. That's what's going on here. The writing is separate from that. It would be nice to integrate all those things, and maybe we will do that in the future. But for now, this is the course. There's other things that have been done at Union County College. It's been done with biology in the past. That worked very well for the students, but it was dropped for reasons kind of beyond the ESL program's control. There was a reading and business 101 linked course that the enrollment was down and that disappeared. English 111, that's our ESL specific composition course. The ESL writing course with UC 101, which is it's our freshman orientation course. So it's teaching them about college survival skills. And it's a way to kind of also help them with anything else they might need. And also, I believe there's English 111 integrated with library science, so they get the help with the research separate from the composition course. So this is the course description, and just focusing on what you have to enroll in both. I'm on Tuesday, they're on Thursday. They're supposed to be responding to text, fiction, and articles in the area of psychology in my course. So there's the reading part, and it should be focused on psychology. And to develop reading skills and strategies they can apply in other academic work. So we're supposed to help them with college and reading strategies that will help them. That's what I read originally, and then these are our outcomes. Most of these would be the same as most of our level 6, our highest level reading classes. The one that's different is what I highlighted. What's different for the psychology reading course that I teach is responding to various texts dealing with psychological issues. So hopefully I'm not dealing with psychological issues, although I am, but with the texts are supposed to be psychology related. And to help them develop the reading and study skills necessary to succeed in Psych 101 and other college courses. Yes?
Would there be an instance where, say, for example, the psychology class has them doing an assignment, a written assignment, so that they would come to your class on, what was it, Tuesdays, if they do reading, and you guys could do it together, analyze it together, piece it, break it down, and then they're ready to write it that night for that Thursday class?
That, in the best case scenario, it would work like that. And recently, I'm getting closer to that kind of cohesion. But that hasn't always been there. But they have to do, because now I know the professor I'm working with, and we'll get into all that. And I know what's going on in that class. So I guess I could talk about problems right now from the beginning. We've always had adjunct professors as the psychology professors. And there's nothing wrong with adjuncts, but they're busy and they don't have time to talk to me all the time. They have other jobs, other priorities. So the communication has not always been what it should. I also heard an amazing idea this morning of our keynote speakers saying that before they did their paired course, they got paid to go take the course. I hadn't taken psychology since a big lecture hall in 1991. So I knew a little bit, but I've been learning over the years. And I can't go to his class on Thursday night because I have a class of my own, or I have kids at home that I have to, unless I'm getting paid for it, I haven't gone. But over the years, I've learned psychology again, slowly. But those things would help to know what's going on in there so that I can be really tightly knit with what he's doing. And I'm getting better at that. But anyway, he assigns summaries and responses, and I have now broken down how to do that but I'll take one. They have to find their own article. I just take one article from the New York Times and show them how I would go about summarizing it, and I'm pretty good at explaining summarizing at this point and responding to it, and work on that together so that they can succeed on these assignments, because they have to do 5 of them over the course of the semester. My research in advance of this presentation, I asked the professor I work with, because he teaches 3 sections, only one of which is the linked. I said, do you teach the same thing? And he said, yeah, about the same. He doesn't really change it. And I said, what do you do differently? Which I'll get, and he said it's pretty much the same, just that the only difference is that he'll get some feedback from me about what's working and what's not working. For instance, last semester, his writing assignment was one bigger paper, and it had to be from a peer-reviewed article. And I looked at, a peer-reviewed psychology article is very dense, and the students were already intimidated. But to look at that, they were just I can't even summarize that. So they're probably just going to copy the abstract, which, if they have any sense. And so I said, maybe you could start with something easier. So now he's using something from magazines, or like the New York Times psychology section, or from or newspapers, which is so we are helping each other figure out how to do it right. Everyone probably has their different style. So I've only worked with a couple of the professors, because those are the ones that have been teaching this course. They basically all use the same textbook, I believe, at our school. But Is that, so you're asking, is it?
I was just wondering if, because you said you had different, you've worked with different adjunct or full-time professors, if you have to recreate everything, because each professor does things differently and they have different types of writing assignments?
I have to be very flexible and kind of learn as I go, and so those are all points you have to be able to communicate with them. But for example, for a year like last year, I had the adjunct I work with now most of the time is good. They like him, and he's actually bilingual. His name's Jose, and he understands them and he gets it, and they like him. They had one last year that he barely knew that this was a linked course. Like, I reached out to him before the semester. I said, we should talk about this course. And he's like, who are you? Like, what do you want? And the whole year went like that. And the students were complaining, and it was hard to figure out. I had to figure out from them what was going on. And so you have to be flexible. And these are kind of part of my suggestions. So just to get ahead to it, is you're hoping to deal with full-timers or else really committed adjuncts who want to do this.
So you really have to do the reaching out.
Yes, because I'm the full-timer, and I'm the one who's at all concerned with the success of this. He wants his students to succeed, but not you know, he understands. Luckily, this guy's great because he is bilingual, and so he gets it, you know. But they're not all going to get it. So you want to pick a good one. All right, I want to explain about just what we do at our high-level reading. Because Judas was asking questions about this kind of thing, but like, do you use a novel or what do you do? At Union County, we use Growing Up is the #1, and that's very popular. I never used it because it just wasn't my thing. But the students like it. A lot of people use like Kite Runner. Students love it. For me, I want it to be about America. Some people use like reading, with lots of shorter readings and reading skills books. I don't really like that kind of thing. So I ended up with a namesake. I just liked the book, and it describes an Indian American family. So I think it's modern and it relates to like their cultural issues. But that's not going to work I'm supposed to find something more psychological, and that was not psychological. So when I got told I'm teaching this, other professors had used Reviving Ophelia. Not for me, about teenage girls. I couldn't picture talking about that the whole semester. Lance Armstrong, I actually am a cyclist. I love cycling, but even back in 2007, I knew that something wasn't quite right with Lance. I had my suspicions that he might be a little phony. So I respect what he's done, but he's a cheater. So it's probably interesting. I've read the book, but I didn't see the psychology in it really. There's the textbook, which you guys use the textbook. I knew they had a textbook. I was honestly scared of it. I find textbooks boring and dense, and I didn't think it was I'm coming from this novel like where we're trying to build fluency and really engage with something, and I was scared of how dry the textbook would be. So I kind of avoided the textbook. And I came up with a blend I chose Blink as kind of a blend because it's nonfiction. It's written in a popular style, and it talks about all different areas and a lot of psychology experiments in a more casual style. And I found that it was a lot of things that I could do like interactive with it. And for me, it was just the right choice. It's difficult for them, but it was something I could help them along with and teach them how to deal with it, teach them how to take notes. So that's what I ended up with at first. And I'm going to kind of, just because I'm talking about my approaches and my experience, I'm just going to quickly take you through some things I did with it that I thought were pretty good, but eventually I came to a different place with it. So first of all, I did note-taking with them. And I would start off, we skipped the introduction, and I just showed them my notes, and I talked through the notes to show that for 14 pages, that's what I wrote down, because Malcolm Gladwell has a way of telling a story for about 2 or 3 pages, and there's a point to it. You have to find the point, and then he moves on to something else, but they're all connected somehow. So I tried to show them, okay, here's the main idea of what we just read, and now we're moving on to something else. And if you don't take notes, you're going to be totally lost. You're not going to remember what you read. You might enjoy, like, for me it's enjoyable. For them, maybe it was enjoyable or not, but it was more enjoyable than the textbook as far as I was concerned. So I thought that worked well. It's like I could teach them to take notes, and I required them to take notes as homework near the beginning, picking out key terms and main ideas. Then in class so that was like homework, but I would model it. In class, well, there's one thing, I tried to make it kind of experiential or use different learning styles. Like the first chapter is about this researcher named Gottman, who studies couples and tries to figure out whether their relationship's going to work or not. And he does that by filming them and looking at every little emotion they show, and he analyzes it. And so these emotions are mentioned. So we talk about this vocabulary, and then I would have them get in partners and they'd have to act out a particular emotion without telling, and the audience would have to guess what they were acting out. It just is a different way to do the vocabulary. Another thing that was cool about this book, like he talks later in the chapter, he talks about the Big 5 personality test. You can go online and take it. I see myself as someone who is talkative, tends to find fault with others. So I had them take this, and then we'd go to the computer lab, and then we'd talk about, they could come over and ask me what that means, finds fault with others, or careless or reserved, what does that mean? And there's like 45 questions. So it's a way to do some vocabulary and a different kind of reading that related to the book, but was just different activities. So I was kind of just experimenting here because there was no real blueprint for what to do. So I kind of used this as a little sandbox, this class. So it was fun. And then they would get results about their personality, how conscientious, we'd work on pronunciation, like the word conscientious is a hard word to pronounce for anybody. Extrovert, are you an introvert? And then there'd be writing assignments, like report on your results of the Big 5 test. Respond to the results that you disagree or agree with. Explain why you agree or disagree by commenting on your own personality traits in the Big 5 areas. So they would talk about whether they agreed that they were an introvert or an extrovert and have some writing linked into that, or whether they were conscientious and what that meant. So that was the type of thing I did. Another thing in the book, there's a Scramble sentence test. There's 5 words mixed up. You have to make a sentence out of 4 of them. But the point really isn't to make the sentence. The point is that there's a lot of words about oldness in here, like Florida, wrinkled, gray, and golf. Old. So the idea is that this, they even say, the Florida, you have to explain that old people live in Florida to them. But the idea is that this is part of an experiment where you give this to somebody, they don't know that the words are in there that are old, and supposedly they'll walk down the hall, and after they take it, they walk slower because they're primed to be old. So I would have them take it, and when I was really like trying stuff out, I even had them go to another room, take it, and I timed them, but it was very hard to do that. It was like I needed assistance and stuff, and I didn't have the budget for that. But I tried to show them it was good because it talks about a lot of experimentation and like the scientific method. Chapter 3 talks about the implicit association test, where you take it online and you sort pictures, and there's either pictures of European American faces or African American faces, or there's words that are either good or bad. And you do it as quick as you can, and supposedly it shows whether unconsciously you have a preference for whites or blacks. And he writes it out in the book, but you can go online and take it. And it's a psychology experiment that's constantly going on from Harvard. And then you get a result. This is not my result. I'm not going to tell you my result. But whatever it is, it's not something you're conscious of anything. It's just society does that. And then I would have them do a journal in response to that. And hopefully they understood this better than just reading it. So it was something, to tie into the book, and it involves reading, but also they could write in response to it and hopefully understand some of these harder things to understand by actually engaging with them. And it was good. It was fun. Oh, he talks, chapter 6, my favorite part of the book, he explains the Amadou Diallo shooting in a very detailed way to kind of look at what happened. Why did these white police officers shoot this unarmed black man? What was going on in their minds unconsciously, and making these bad split decisions. And then I would bring in the jury instructions for New York State for homicide or manslaughter, and ask them. We kind of just have a discussion, read the jury instructions for what manslaughter or criminally negligent homicide is, and have them discuss it and maybe even write a verdict of whether these police officers were guilty. There were so many experiments mentioned in the book, and then what I would do is have them design and in groups do their own experiments and actually collect some data. So they might do like a test do a race IAT, but compare how people born in America did on it to people born in their country, if they're from Colombia or someone not born in America. They would design it, and actually they would gather a little bit of data, and there was all kinds of things that they did. And it was a little bit crazy to do and a lot of work, but it worked out pretty well, and it was a good way to just talk about the scientific method and how to build an experiment and compare information. So it had mixed results, to be honest, but it was usually some really good ones, and then some people that just didn't really get it, but it was interesting, I thought. It was all kind of fun. However, I stopped it and I went back to the text a couple of years ago for a few reasons. The big reason was I realized that I was doing all this stuff, but I was doing a lot of psychology-related reading, but I was kind of avoiding or distracting from my job of supporting them in the psychology course. I was always doing a little bit of support, but I realized that I should probably be doing more. I know they must have been having trouble with the text because it's not easy to deal with. They mostly weren't reading the text, and like you said, I didn't really know what was going on all the time, how much they really needed to read, and so on. They had to buy the text usually anyway, and it's like $100 at least, so they should be using it as much as possible. I was getting tired of using Blink. Whatever you do, eventually you want to move on and use something else. And I felt ready for the textbook. Now that I kind of had an idea of what was going on in psychology, so I felt like, okay, maybe I could handle this now. Well, it would have been better if I had taken the course psychology first and gotten some training in what I should be doing to support first. But I learned over time, okay, maybe I could do this now. And I wasn't scared of it anymore. And another professor who also teaches this started teaching it, and she chose a book that is all about practicing college learning strategies. That's like a textbook, but it's really just showing about note-taking and planning your time, and note-taking for lectures, and critical thinking, and learning styles, and all designed to make them really think about how they learn and how to learn better. So I went back to the textbook, and I really was trying to focus more on support now. So all that stuff I did with Blink, it was good, but maybe I'm not sure whether it was the right approach or not. So first of all, from the beginning, I always did this for support, which is the first thing on my lesson plan is always just open discussion of what did you do on Thursday night in the other class, because I wasn't there. And that usually, especially early in the semester, generates a big conversation and a lot of crosstalk of oh yeah, we have homework, no, we don't have to do that, and nobody knows, and I don't know. So they have to figure it out, and kind of leaders emerge as who's gonna guide us and tell us what exactly we need to do. And then I can go on our web platform and try to show them what needs to be done and figure it out. So I would have them talk, it generates that community of talking to each other and helping each other through through what they need to do. And you would get, I remember this one student, Eric, who just kind of stepped up and would get up there and show everybody what they had to do and how to get to the website. And there's sometimes there was an electronic textbook, and he would explain how you signed up for that and how you bought it. And I would just let them take charge and teach each other and get that reinforcement going. And that is where the community really builds in. They bond because they're lost and they're scared, but they have this other space where they can talk about it and help each other. And so I have to provide that space for them. So for that's always was my number one job, even when I was doing Blink. But I continued to do that. But it didn't always come from me. They had to teach each other because I didn't always know. Based on what Lynn did, I used her, and I did in the beginning talk about study habits for a week or two. I had them make like a master schedule and say, look, you're in college now and you work. How are you going to do this? What are you going to do with your time? And I would model it and do that with them. They would also discuss their study habits, what they do, what they don't do in groups. And there was, in the textbook, instead of buying a whole nother book, the psychology textbook has an introductory chapter of about 15 pages about how to take notes, how to succeed in class. Type of thing that I would never read in college. You just skip that and you get right to the first thing you have to read. But for my first reading, I have them read that and take notes on it because it's more simple than what they're going to get to in the later chapters. And it's if we're a support class here, they're getting some information about how to study strategies and survey, read, question, review. And then they take notes for homework on that. I've already shown them how to take notes a little bit, what I'm looking for. That's their homework, just notes. And then we get back to class. I have discussion questions based on the notes. We start with pronunciation of the words that I think that might come up that they need help with. Then they get in groups with their notes and they go through the discussion questions. So they're starting to form little study groups in my class. And I'm walking around, I check their notes, make sure they're complete, and talk about whether they're in the right form. I don't microscopically check them, but just kind of give them an overview and a score based on 10 points of whether they did it completely and in the right form. And then sometimes yes or sometimes no, there's a quiz after the discussion. At first I might let them use their notes, but eventually I want to wean them away from that and just learn how to have a little study group go over your notes before the quiz and then take the quiz. So it could go either way. And as the semester goes on, we keep on doing this kind of process, but I would start assigning modules that the professor assigned. So they would meet on Tuesday having read and taken notes on something that they're going to be quizzed on Thursday. Now, he usually assigns a whole chapter, which has like 3 modules. I will just pick one module because it's just too much. It's over, so we focus on one. They put an amazing amount of stuff on their syllabus, but I don't think they actually read it all. So that's where it's hard to know what are you actually doing, and you need to communicate with them, like, what should I focus on here? Or I'll pick what seems interesting to me. My quizzes, most of the Psych 101 quizzes are multiple choice. So I do a little bit of that just so they practice that and we can talk about how to do a multiple choice question. But because it's ESL, and like you were saying, you want them writing, I do more short answer questions. So like explain, instead of a multiple choice question about what is the unconditioned response in Pavlov's experiment, I'd ask them to just explain the experiment, which is not easy to do. I can do it, but for them, it takes a lot of practice to try to take something and put it into simple words. But I ask them to do it, and then I model answer. I always am modeling what an answer looks like after the quiz. And so hopefully as the semester goes, they can write clearer answers and clear explanations of these concepts. Psych 101, they're on the same material, they're probably going to have multiple choice questions, but they're more ready for that at that point, and I think they do appreciate that. I might have them just explain a term, and I was doing that in Blink, the same thing, not just multiple choice, but pick a key term and have them explain it or ask short answer questions. Although I did do multiple choice also because that is a big part of what goes on in college, for better or worse. It's just what happens. So I mixed it up. We did different types of note-taking, and I would always model it and show, like, you should be using pictures, and that, you're not, because for some of them, they're starting off and they're just writing in like paragraphs and they're writing everything down. And trying to realize you can't write everything down. Write some definitions, but try not to write in complete sentences. Use symbols, abbreviations, and use pictures. And then we add in the concept of where you divide it in half and you write questions over here. So we showed them different options that you could do. And each week we do something a little bit different. And also another type of note-taking where you go through, you underline main ideas, but then you write questions in the margins. So I gave them different options, and hopefully they decide what works for them. I've definitely realized how important this is because you could read it's almost impossible to get through one of these modules, I think, without falling asleep. And it's not that it's badly written, it's just dense and there's no narrative, and it's actually pretty well written, but it's hard to read. But if you you guys probably know because you're students, but you've got to take notes, because you take the notes, and then I could just take notes, and I would do it, and then I could talk to them about the chapter later. All I need is my notes. But if I tried to do that without the notes, I wouldn't remember anything. I think there was something about a dog, salivating, but I wouldn't remember anything. But if I have notes, I can remember everything. So I think they get sold on notes, and that's a good thing. And I'm sold on it now. I'm learning some psychology, which is cool. I mean, it's actually kind of fun but it's a lot of work. And for them, it's twice as much or 3 times as much work. But if they want to go to college, that's the way it is. Another thing I do, we move into presentations later in the semester so that they can speak and explain ideas. Again, now I've stuck with the book. In the past, I would have them just choose their own nonfiction book, like Habits of Highly Effective People or whatever they want, and give a little presentation about it. And I would make it clear I don't expect you to read the whole book, but read a couple chapters and tell me what the book's about. But when I got back to the textbook, I would have them pick a module. And they've just been doing this the last few weeks, pick one lesson and they teach it with a partner. And I require PowerPoint because I think that's also necessary to write down main ideas, use pictures. One thing that I've developed out of this class, which I like, is so the assignment is that by the end of the semester they pick a module and they teach it. But before that in a class they've read a unit and it has a bunch of key terms, and I just give everybody one term and they have half an hour to prepare and they have to come up with their notes and explain it, just to get a little practice and to comment on how to do this. Then another class, they've been assigned the chapter on drugs, or whatever that module is for that week. And I say, okay, who knows how to do PowerPoint? And usually at least 1/3 to half of them do and half don't. So I put them in groups with someone who knows and someone who doesn't know and someone maybe who half knows. And they have the rest of the class to make a PowerPoint on that module. So instead of a quiz, they do that. So now you got one student, everybody at the end of that knows how to use PowerPoint because it's not that hard. And they're going over the module in a different way. They're talking about drugs and drug use and trying to pick out the main ideas of it. And that's something that I would use in any class now as a way to teach PowerPoint without having me to go up and show them how to do it or have a big list of instructions, because that's not really how you learn how to do something like that. Also, I talked about the summarizing already. He requires that they summarize. That's part of our level 6 writing. One of our big goals is to teach that. So now it crosses over nicely when I'm teaching that, and they have to do it in psychology class anyway. They also have to analyze, which is hard. Like, how do I analyze this? They're supposed to judge the research methods and stuff, and I try to help them through that, although it's not easy. And then they're supposed to respond. And with all of this, just to be what I try to do basically is explain what they need to do. I always demonstrate. If I take the notes or I write a summary later, usually, first I tell them what to do with instructions and then have them do it. And then I correct it, and then I show an example, and then we do it many times with the notes or the summaries, because it usually does not happen on the first time. So I've learned to try not to do so many things, now I'm not doing so many things, really just the note-taking, presenting skills, and summarizing. And that's about all the skills that I can really teach them. Maybe some multiple choice test taking. But it's a very different class than what it used to be when I was doing all these activities with Blink, and was fun. Maybe it was fun, but it was a little chaotic. So I don't know which is better. Results, we've seen a lot of results today. We have minimal results, or some results. My director said the average GPA in their Psych 101 class is 2.9. Out of 40 students, only 2 failed. It seems pretty good. I honestly don't have comparison to all the other psych sections and how they do. For this spring, or last spring, the GPA was 3.3 with no Fs. Honestly, a lot of that might depend on the professor, who the professor is, and it's a small sample size of professors. For retention, for these students, after 1 semester, 82.5, 1 year, or fall to fall, was 72.5, 1.5 years, that means up till now, is 70%, which my director tells me is somewhat better than average, but not astronomical, but it's good. And the GPA of the students continuing, if they have at least 12 credits, is 3.1. So similar over here, 80% for 1 year, 80% after 1 semester, 72 after 1 year, and we're only 1 year away from that. He couldn't get statistics going all the way back. And their GPA 3.1. Actually, this was still Blink. Then this was kind of a transition semester where I was using a different book, but trying to do more with the psych book, but using a book called You Are Not So Smart that had a lot of little psychology ideas. It was more accessible. And it was fun, but it was actually fall 2014 where I went full on into the text. And I might go back in the other direction. I don't know yet. It remains to be seen. So the data for now would be more interesting for this last year if they're really doing better. Again, this is the other professor. He said they do about the same as these students do about the same because he teaches other sections of non-ESL or just whatever. There might be ESL students in there, but they're not linked. And he says, I asked, do you treat them differently? He said about the same. The only difference was that he'll take my feedback and we talk to each other more to adjust things. So that's the research as far as that. And I would like more as far as comparing how these students do compared to psychology students as a whole. I did a survey recently and the results were very positive as far as so pretty much all of them had positive things to say about how it helped them now and supported them. Taught me how to read, take notes, learn about the material, read a text, summarizing, put it in my own words. But I want to point out I did not edit their responses for them. So, and I did that for a reason, because they're doing well in psychology class, but so those who would be tempted to say, oh, well then why do they need ESL? You know, why do they need, for me, there's grammar issues there that just still need to be worked out, and it might happen in time, but it's going to happen faster if they're still getting that direct ESL help. So that would lead to a conclusion at the end that I, as an ESL teacher, think we need to keep having our role involved as long as possible, because you can pass a course like this because it's mostly multiple choice, or it might be some reaction papers where the teacher looks at it and says, okay, that's pretty good, that's a B. And they're not doing the type of work that we do as far as really trying to help them improve their grammar and vocabulary and all that. All of these had good things to say, but they all still need work on how to say them 100% clearly. We understand them, but the grammar, is this college level grammar? Probably not in my book, but I know they're very bright people. They just need time to work on it, okay? Learning, paraphrasing difficult topics in your own words. And these are actually not my students. I just took them off Google. But those are my students, some of them. It helped read the book, shows how to do well not only in the subject but in college. Helps because we already discussed what we're going to learn in Psych 101. So they had a lot of good reasons for why it helps. And I don't think I said, say what you want. If you have nothing positive to say, I don't care. I think they were happy with it. So my fear that it was too boring, well, it's kind of true for me now. So that's the problem. So the challenges, as we've talked about, coordinating with the other professors, especially if they're adjuncts. And again, not bashing adjuncts, but they just don't have time. So if you get a bad one, it's almost impossible to do the kind of work you need to do.
The thing with adjuncts is that they, as being a former adjunct,
Yeah.
I used this word one time, you're moving from place to place. So you don't have an office.
Right.
You don't have the office hour time and all that kinds of stuff.
Yeah, they're moving targets, and so,
You can't blame them.
yeah, no, definitely not blaming. Just I hope that whoever's in charge chooses someone who's really invested in it. You have to be, right? As a support group in my class, we're there to help each other figure out what you need to do. But that can turn into, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. Like they'll complain about the other teacher or just complaining. And I want to hear them, but at the same time, there has to be a point like, okay, grow up and just do what you need to do. So it's a tough. If you ask them to talk about what's going on, it can explode. Or a culture sometimes develops of just they're complaining a little too much about what's going on in the other class. And I need to solicit what's going on, but I have to nip any complaining in the bud. And what I'm like, now that I'm the support guy, I would rather be the star of the show. And so I'm trying to let them have their groups and let them teach each other presentations. And be more hands-off, but sometimes, what about me? I used to be the one coming up with everything and thinking of everything and in control, and you have to let go and be the support. And sometimes I feel like I would like to teach the psychology, but that's not my job. My job is to teach them reading skills. So maybe I'll get a psychology degree and be a psychology teacher. And then this is always your support, so I have to be careful. I tend to give a lot of work, but I'm backing off on the work because they have a lot to do in psychology, and it's not going to help them if I bombard them with work, because then they're going to do worse in their psychology class. They'll be overwhelmed. But they need to be writing, and they need to be reading more. So it's this fine line of supporting, but also wanting to teach them and get their English as good as possible. And it's something I've kind of backed off quite a bit. I might need to throw in a little more extra reading from me. But then they kind of start complaining, who are you to, you're not I'm not the real teacher anymore. So it's a weird dynamic sometimes where by the end of the semester, I want to give them more work, but I almost feel guilty, but they really need it because they don't know how to summarize. And that's going to be on my final exam. So, and they should know how. Okay, and recommendations. So use committed professors and who know what's going on, and I didn't when it started, and who can adapt. You have to be willing to be flexible and see you can't plan everything out ahead of time because you're working with different things. Solicit feedback to assess student needs. I think I just started doing that, and I'll keep doing it. But I do that verbally all the time, what's going on with your class. Don't relax the standards too much, so let's hopefully not turn this into, oh, we don't even need ESL because they can pass these courses. Because I think no one would want our graduates of our colleges to write an email, something that's not, they can't, hopefully by the end of graduating their grammar will be better, but they need us to get there.